Well, the middle of the year has definitely crept up on me, so I think I better talk about where I'm sitting with my reading for the year. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Unlimited Reads. My name is Chris, and today I'll be doing my mid-year freakout book tag, a tag I had forgotten all about, given that the first half of the year is nearly over, until I saw MJ over at her channel, Reading This Life, do her tag, and it prompted me to get my ass in gear and do the same, because it is a really good tag to do. But if you haven't checked out MJ's channel, please do. She is a massive advocate for small booktube channels. She's just clicked over 2,000 subscribers, which is an awesome effort, and she has a regular segment called Booktube Support Group, or Small Booktube Support Group, which is fantastic, and she has given me a plug on her channel before, which I'll always appreciate. And what I like about MJ's channel as well, she's a free spirit. She reads whatever the hell she wants and doesn't do TBRs, and I envy her in a lot of ways for that, because I feel like I'm a slave to TBRs at times. And next year I might just change my way of thinking and read whatever I want as well, rather than feel bound by TBRs. So we'll see how that goes. But this tag is a really good one to do, because when you do book reviews, and a lot of these books I'm going to talk about have been reviewed on the channel, what you do is you do your review, you record it, you edit it, you upload it, and then days later you might think, oh, I should have spoken about this or that. So this kind of tag is really good for revisiting those books and perhaps adding some things that may have been missed when the reviews were uploaded, which so it's a good opportunity. And now, as it sits at the moment, my Goodreads reading goal was 85. I'm embarrassed to say I'm only sitting at 26 books out of 85 books read this year so far. So I've got my work cut out if I want to try and achieve the 85 book mark. But I would attribute the 26 books I've read so far to my reading slowing down a little bit. And that's purely because I use a lot of my mental energy in my new career. I started at the beginning of the year, and it does take a lot out of me, and doesn't leave a lot of brain power to read as much as I used to. But that's all good. I'm still reading what I can, so it is all good. Now, this tag has 13 questions, so I'm looking forward to going through those with you. So let's kick it off with the first one. The best book you've read so far in 2022. For me, it has to be The Mother by Tim Logan, who I spoke to on the channel. He was a fantastic guy, and I thought this book was really good in the sense that it was a really good psychological thriller about a mother who gets wrongfully imprisoned for the murder of her husband, and upon her release 10 years later, she has to bring the actual perpetrators to justice and have the monumental task of trying to reconnect with her sons. So it was a very, very engaging story. It kept you guessing all the way to the end, and there was a massive twist at the end, which I found was fantastic. So the whole thing was brilliantly written. Now, Tim Logan has written quite a few psychological thrillers, and this one has to be ranked among his best. I really, really enjoyed it, and I did review that one on the channel as well if you wanted to check that out. Alright, prompt number 2. The best sequel you've read so far in 2022. This one wasn't too hard to think about. I've been reading the Lance Brody Supernatural Suspense series by Michael Robertson Jr. It is a fantastic series. Lance Brody reminds me in many ways of Odd Thomas. So he has special supernatural abilities, and he has to use those abilities to confront evil in the world. And it's just so engaging, and I can't wait to finish the rest of these books. But it was Dark Shore that was my favourite sequel for the year, because the plot further developed the characters really, really well. We got to see more of who is threatening Lance. A couple of supernatural entities called the Reverend and the Surfer. And up until this book, Lance had to contend with things on his own. He hasn't had really much in the way of outside help. And with this book that I did review on the channel as well, he defeats his adversaries at the end of this book, and he doesn't do it alone. There's a little bit of a team up from an unlikely source, which was really fantastic. And if I didn't have so much on my reading plate at the moment, I would have gone ahead and read a few more, but I plan on finishing the series. There's 7 books in total at the moment. Michael's currently writing book number 8, of which I've got a bit of news here. He has agreed to have me as one of his beta readers. When he gets around to, when he finishes the book, he'll send it out to his beta readers, and he will invite feedback. So it's a massive thing. I'm very honoured to do that, and I can't wait to see it. So I do want to complete the series before I get the opportunity to read his latest book before it gets published. That would be a real buzz, because they're awesome books, and Michael is a fantastic writer. Alright, prompt number 3, a new release you haven't read but want to. Now this one, I think it got released last month, I'm not 100% sure, but it's called The Scarlet Papers by Matthew Richardson. And this one, I purely picked this one up on a whim. The cover was very eye-catching, but the premise is really good. So it spans decades, the story about this specific document that, if discovered, could change world history. And it's set mainly in present-day London. A British academic is on the run, and it's just looks like a really good mystery, sort of like in the same vein of Dan Brown. So it looked really good. The best part about it though was the print inside was nice and big, so it's easy on the eyes, so that's always a plus with me. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one. Prompt number 4, the most anticipated new release for the rest of this year. For those who watch my channel regularly and who know me, there is only one answer for this. I mean, there are a couple of books I'm really looking forward to, but the one I'm looking forward to the most is The Secret by Lee and Andrew Child. It is the latest Jack Reacher book that gets released in October. I have approached the publisher about possibly getting an advanced reading copy, which I would love to have, because I would love to read it before it's published. But this one is going to be another prequel Jack Reacher novel, where it's set in the past, back in the 1990s, and he has to unravel a conspiracy that goes right to the top of the US government. So that is hands down the book I'm most looking forward to, because it is one of my favourite series of all time. I love the Jack Reacher books, and can't wait for season 2 of Reacher to come on Amazon Prime as well. Hopefully it won't be too far away. Alright, prompt number 5, the biggest disappointment this year. Now this year, I won't lie, I have had a few DNFs, but the most frustrating DNF for me was Dean Koontz's The House at the End of the World. Now, there was this one and Quicksilver a couple of years ago, which I didn't really like, and I've been pretty outspoken about that. With The House at the End of the World, there was a mystery that needed to be solved, and it's the main focus is the main character who lives by herself on an island, and she witnesses strange goings on from a neighbouring island. There looks to be a conspiracy there, which is all well and good, but guys, I got through almost half the book and nothing is happening. All we see is all I've been reading about is how she's interacting with a fox on the island. How a couple of strange men come over to the island looking for someone, and that was alright, I suppose. But I don't want to read about her chapters about making food and cooking and things like that. It just did not get going, and it frustrated me, and I gave it at least almost half the book before I tanked it. And the book before that, Big Dark Sky, was really good. So there's a bit of inconsistency from Dean Koontz that I've been finding in recent years. I mean, he wrote a cracker of a multiverse book called Elsewhere. That was phenomenal. So it's a little bit of touch and go. I'm always going to attempt to read what he brings out, because I have been a long-term fan of his, and I love all his earlier work. Recently for Horror Mayhem, I did read Strange Highways, which was fantastic, but yeah, there is a bit of inconsistency there. And do you know the ebooks that he released in the last few years, where it was an ebook series called Nameless Season 1 and Season 2? Absolutely love those. So it's just frustrating when you might read a couple of books that you think are really good of his, and then he brings one out that disappoints you. So I just think it's a little bit frustrating. He does have another one coming out next year called The Bad Weather Friend, I believe, so we'll see what that's like. And also later this year he also has one called Afterlife coming out as well, which I'll no doubt pick up and try and see how I go. Alright, the biggest surprise this year so far. Now this one was a remarkable book. It was extraordinary, and that was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. May he rest in peace, because he did just pass away this week at, was it 89? I'm not quite sure of his age, but he had made such an impact on readers, and I was fortunate enough to pick up a really nice copy of this one, which is this one here. And I had heard a little bit about it, but I had no idea it would be this good. Now, what actually happened with this book, when I started to read it, the characters aren't named. The main characters are the man and the boy. Normally that would frustrate me, but the quality of the writing was incredible, to say the least. And there were some parts in the book, now don't get me wrong, if I come across a book that's not punctuated right, or has something off with the grammar, I practically throw a book across the room in frustration, because I'm very, very particular about formatting and grammar in writing. Now this one had a couple of those issues, but it didn't frustrate me because the story was so engaging, the writing was fantastic, and Cormac McCarthy just draws you straight in. And this situation where the world is made up of just ash, you never get an explanation of what happened. Cormac McCarthy leaves it up to you to draw your own conclusions. There are no specific locations, you have to figure things out for yourself. But the depressive nature of the story got me down a little bit, but at the end of it there was a bit of a silver lining, with a little bit of hope. But you got to experience with the characters what starvation was like. And you were rooting for these characters, because they would come across a hoard of food, and they might shack up in an old house somewhere, but it's only temporary because they had to move on, because there are all sorts of unsavory types in that dystopian world. So yeah, it was a really extraordinary book, and it surprised the hell out of me. I didn't know what to expect. Didn't expect to get as depressed as I was reading it. But the writing was very, very powerful, and I did review that one on the channel as well if you haven't checked it out. But that is hands down a really big surprise for this year. Okay, now prompt number 7, favourite new author or debut or new to you. This one for me has to be Louis L'Amour. I have read one book, and I'm currently reading another book of his as part of the June on the Range reading project created by Michael Vaughan. When you first start to read his books, it takes a few pages to get used to his writing style, because with the Sackett saga that I'm currently reading, I guess he has to write in an old English kind of way so that he can remain authentic with the language spoken in the 17th century. So but once you get going, he writes action brilliantly. He has so much conflict in his books, it's just absolutely incredible. So he's definitely a new favourite author for me, because you can get drawn in and captivated by his writing style, which is really, really good. And looking forward to reading more of his work in the future. Alright, question number 8 is a very short answer to this one. My newest fictional crush, and that would be no one. So I don't feel a fictional crush on any particular character or anything like that. So that's a very, very short answer. Alright, prompt number 9, newest favourite character. This one wasn't hard. It is going to be Lance Brodie, the main character of the Supernatural Suspense series, and you know, I've just established such a good rapport with Lance. He's so humble, he's so good, he is compassionate, he has so much potential with his supernatural abilities that I can't wait to explore more as I read more of Michael Robertson Jr.'s books. So he's definitely hands down a favourite character for me for this year. Prompt number 10, a book that made you cry. Now, there were a couple that got me misted up, but the main one that actually got to me and touched me was Big Tree by Brian Selznick. I did touch upon this book in the last tag video, and it was just a really, really nice story, and these two really cute sycamore seeds just steal the show. And again, if you haven't read this one, I highly recommend you do, because it will, if you're feeling a little bit down, it will pick you up. And it's full of beautiful grey rendered drawings, and the story spans across 65 million years. There is a positive message at the end. There's this mysterious voice that speaks to all living things throughout the book, and you don't know who the voice is, and I'm not going to spoil it here. But it's a very, very nice message, and there are a couple of moments in the book where your eyes will well up. So it does invoke some emotion there, which is fantastic. All right, prompt number 11, a book that made you happy. That one has to go, I think, to The Shining by Stephen King. I was in a reading slump in May, and I picked it up because I can always rely upon it, because it is my favourite book of all time. And it made me feel better. It does cheer you up, even though it's a horror novel to the highest degree. It certainly cheers me up anyway, because I just love it. It's so well written. I've read it my 7th reread in May, and I'll continue to read it every few years or so. Nothing can beat it, in my opinion. All right, prompt number 12, the most beautiful book you've brought this year or received. Now, this one immediately comes to mind. I actually shouted myself a really good hard copy version of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. It is absolutely sensational. I've had it wrapped in plastic to preserve it, and I plan on jumping into the Cosmere early next year. I'm hoping to. And just look at this. You've got beautiful end papers with the maps of a map of Roshar, and just the way it's set out. It's got really nice looking font as well, but just the cover design, it's just fantastic. Love it, and can't wait to get stuck in. But that's definitely the most beautiful book I've definitely brought this year. All right, and the last prompt is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, let's do the math. 26, 36, 46, 56, 66, 76, 59 books to go. I don't think I'll do it. I'm going to try, but you know what? I'm not going to put any pressure on myself. If I go under the target, so be it. I just want to enjoy what I'm reading, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'd have to put a massive amount of pressure on myself to actually reach the target. And you know what? I'm not going to stress about it. If I get to 60 books for the year, hey, you know, that's fine, as long as I'm reading and enjoying what I read. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. This was a really good fun tag to do. I really enjoyed it, and I was happy to share that with you. And thanks again to MJ for reminding me that I had to do this one. I did one last year, which was a lot of fun, because it's always good to just check in with you all and let you know how my reading's going for the year. It's not a bad recap, and it sort of breaks up the year a little bit before I do my end of year review, which goes in a lot of detail, where I pick my book of the year, which that's very much wide open at the moment. There's still a few good books I have to read this year, which may contend as a top book for the year, so it's going to be a very, very hard choice. But yeah, certainly looking forward to what I'm reading for the rest of the year, and I've got quite a few things lined up. I've got to continue with the Jack Reacher rereading project. That's it's been a while between the books, but I have had 2 back-to-back reading projects to do. I've had Horror Mayhem, and as I said, I'm doing Dune on the Range. So I've committed to those, and once June is over, I'm going to see to it that I read at least 3 or 4 more Jack Reacher books before the end of the year, so that I can put up the reviews as part of the rereading project. I do need to get back into the Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot reading project as well, so I will be doing that. And there's a lot of things I want to read. I want to read a couple more Robert McCammon books. I want to read the Bill Hodges trilogy by Stephen King before Holly is released in September, and a few others as well. I want to read the next Mark Dawson thriller book. I want to read more Lance Brody books by Michael Robertson Jr. So there is a lot to read, and looking forward to that. So there you go, guys. That is it for my mid-year freakout book tag. Thank you very much for watching. As always, put some comments below, and until the next video, guys, I'll see you later.